Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Nils Smith, and I am with one of my favorite people in the world, Natchi Lazarus. Nachi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Nils. I'm excited to be here.
So Nachi and I met in India, and Nachi, I don't know that I've ever learned more about social media from one person in a day than spending some time with Nachi. And really, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I took away is I've talked often about wanting to lead global ministries, but the context that I had was from a very American perspective. And so in this conversation, one of the things that I want to bring to the conversation is, Nachi, you travel all over the world, and you spend a lot of time in the United States, and you live in India. And so I want to get into that conversation. But before we dig into kind of global context, and specifically we're going to talk about WhatsApp, which I'm fired up about. But Nachi, can you give a little bit of background of your history, your upbringing, and even your coming to faith and all of that?
Sure. So I live in South India right now. I live in a city called Chennai. I was born and brought up in the same state, but down south. And I grew up in a non-Christian family, a very strong, religious, but non-Christian family. And then I grew up, and I'm the first Christian in my house. I came to know the Lord and started walking with Him. And I was an engineer, and then I moved to doing my MBA and marketing. And that's when I fell in love with marketing. And for the last 20 years, I've been in this field. And early on, we were doing traditional marketing. So I started off with a traditional ad agency, and it was my dream job. And I did ads and print ads and all that kind of stuff. And then about 14 years ago, we started transitioning to the digital world. And interestingly, one of the first things that we did was with a faith-based organization. That was our own church. And that's how this whole thing triggered off. And so I've been in this space for close to 15 years now. And we've tried all kinds of things, and ended up with all my work and all the experiments and all the things that happened, ended up writing a book. And the book is called The Connected Church, and we have an agency that helps nonprofits, churches, and ministries. And my focus is completely on the faith-based space. I help ministries and churches, and also Christian businesses that are mission-oriented. So that's like the shortest version of my life.
Yeah, it's I love it, and I think knowing you, I know there are about 5 hours between each sentence that you made of detail that should be told. But for the sake of time here, we can leave some gaps, and I hope people will take time to get to know you and reach out to you following this podcast, because it really, Nachi's story is so fascinating when you get into the details of it. And he's got a beautiful family and does incredible kingdom work. And I think he has taken his unique digital marketing skills and is transforming the country of India by partnering with ministries and with his agency, but not just India. And the ministry impact is really going globally, and it's such a fascinating focus that you have. Tell me, maybe, Nachi, as you have a unique understanding of the world, and you really have a significant understanding of the Western world, what for Americans, from just a context standpoint, should people understand about India as a country? If an American ministry really wants to be global and they want to reach India, what context what are they missing, maybe?
I wouldn't say what they are missing, but there are things that does not come under the purview simply because of the cultural gaps. And a couple of things that I've always noticed is the feeling that you're coming on to either too strong or too soft when you come with a message or with a heart of teaching. And I know most organizations and ministries that come to India, want to do work with India, they come with the amazing intention of serving and ministering, but they're always either, I see two categories. One is they're either holding back, thinking that I don't want to be this guy coming from the US and telling you what to do type of thing. They're trying to be humble, so they're holding back. or they're a little bit on the stronger side.
Yes.
I think these are the two extremes that I see, and both you just have to find the right balance. The beauty of India is we are a people who are very much in tune with the Western world, and many of our families and people all over the country, in every state we have many families that live abroad. Our Bollywood movies are all about the Western world. We are very much in line with that, and because of the internet, and for two reasons. One is because of the internet, and the other is because of our language. Because we are largely an English-speaking country, so we watch movies and the culture and everything. So we're kind of aware of the Western world. So I would say for ministries who are trying to pull back, I would say don't have to. You can let go. You can be yourself. We kind of, as a country, we understand where you're coming from. And for ministries who are coming on a little bit stronger, we also want to. I also want to say, try to be a little more understanding and a little more. If you listen more to any kind of group that you're ministering with, and that'll be much better. So those are the big things I've seen.
Are there any ministries in particular that you've seen really do a great job of coming into India and then really translating effectively and adapting to the unique culture of India?
Oh, many of them. I mean, I can name a lot of them, and some of them we have had the privilege to work with. And I mean, one of the organizations that both of us know, MI, is doing a great job, and they're doing something phenomenal. And there are many churches that actually have very powerful ministries here in India that just really serves people with the heart of helping them and so on. So there are churches, there are nonprofits, there are ministries that are doing a great job as well. Most US ministries have some kind of a presence here, most large organizations, and they seem to be doing a really, really good job of serving this nation.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Nachi, I want to get to talk social media.
Do it.
You know what? And there's so many things that I learned. And one of the things that I don't know if I've shared this with you, I have gone Android since I went to India. And so one of the big things that I was fascinated. I mean, almost everyone is using an Android device, and it's just a very different, there's so many different Android devices. Everyone can, has multiple SIM cards. It's really unique and fascinating. Maybe even just from a hardware standpoint, Nachi, what is a big difference in India from what kind of data do they have, internet and devices?
Yeah, so it's a truly a fascinating market, especially for someone like me who goes to multiple other places as well, and then I see what happens in India. It's mind blowing. First of all, to answer your question, data, right? We have one of the cheapest data situation in the entire world. Like, for example, my plan right now, I'm like less than $20. I have unlimited 4G internet, unlimited. Like I can use as much as I want, and it's amazing. Yeah. And when I travel to the US, I pay almost nothing for, again, unlimited roaming and things like that. So our data is really, really cheap. I praise God for that, because that has really opened up the doors for us to really help people in the digital and the social media space. So most people are connected. So that's an amazing thing. The second is the hardware, like you said. There are phones available for like $10 and $15 US, which are like really good. These are not like choppy phones. These are really good phones. And I have multiple phones because I do a lot of testing, so I have Android in all types. So some of the phones, I'm really amazed with the quality of the camera and so on. So so the hardware system is also starting to evolve so much that people are able to afford good phones. So I always say, there are these two sides to this whole equation. One is the spiritual side, where God is looking at the digital world and saying, I want to use these data and devices and everything to reach people. And the other side is the companies that are fighting and that are really getting over each other to make sure they grab this billion people population land. So which is like a fantastic combination, because these guys as a company are trying to reduce the cost by bringing in better solutions. And then God is watching the whole thing, and he's using that for his ministry. I mean, even recently, Facebook's work with Reliance Jio, they have invested a few $billions into India's largest company, giving Facebook a stronger foothold. Google already has a very big foothold. So this nation is starting to become digitally and socially, social media wise, very potential and a powerful place to serve people.
Yeah, fascinating. And then what are the other things that I learned? The Android. I'd been tinkering with like maybe jumping to Android. And then after I was there and I just kept learning, I was like, I've got to get into Android. There's so many different possibilities if I can just break free of the iPhone addiction that I was living in. And I don't think I'm going back. But I could go on and on about that.
That's a separate
and I get plenty of debates from Americans on that conversation. But one of the other things I learned contextually is that English is the most commonly spoken language in India, that there's so many different dialects or languages that can you maybe help give context to that from a language standpoint?
Sure. So this is the root of that whole situation is the British rule, because we were under the British rule. So we were made to learn English. And then even after the British left, since we were a lot dependent on, say, technology related work and things like that, for the last, I would say about 100 to 80 years, we've had a big thrust on English. So for example, when I grew up, I'm around 42 years old now. And when I grew up, English, one of the things that people told us was, you need to learn English if you want to, really come up in life, because you'll get jobs, you'll get, everything. So the language, English language, is given a lot of importance. But all of us have our first language, then we have our second language, and then we have a third language. So most people in India, you would see, know minimum 3 language, and most of us know 4 to 5, because we have a national language. Hindi is our national language. And then all of us have our regional languages. So for example, my regional language is Tamil, and then our next state that's next to us has a different language. So all of us have a regional language, and then we have English, which is the official transactional language. So English is what our government uses, and all our transactions are in English. So it's like you by default, 3 languages.
That's that, and that we just, some of us know a second language here in America. It's incredible. So Nachi, let's get into social media. Talk about maybe the top 5 social networks right now in India of where are people engaging there on social media?
So, good question. And Facebook is still big here, and they continue to grow and continue to have a big impact in the nation. But I would say currently the biggest in terms of social media is YouTube, if you consider YouTube as a social media. So that is where all the action is happening. The third is Twitter, I would say, in terms of impact, because of politics and televisions are still big from the media's point of view in India. People do spend a considerable time on TV, and TV is very much Twitter focused. I mean, they run polls, they ask people to ask questions. So it's very tightly integrated with Twitter. So politics and TV makes Twitter a very popular platform as well, and also I think because of celebrities. But in terms of action and what is hot kind of a thing, the number one is TikTok. Yes, TikTok is the thing, and especially towards a slightly younger audience, but not just younger. I mean, even the middle-aged and the older people are starting to get on TikTok. So TikTok's being used widely, and TikTok looks at India as a very strategic market. They've started a big ad campaign and even offline campaigns, and they run India-specific stuff simply because of the number of people, and also because it gives them a nice foothold to experiment things and so on. And the fifth, I would say, it was very tight between Instagram and, if you consider WhatsApp as a social media. So Instagram is also picking up really well. So people are starting to use Instagram a lot. So those are like the top ones. But TikTok is just incredible. I mean, the way
it is.
is.
So let's talk about TikTok for a minute, because we,
Sure.
and India has experienced quarantine as well. The whole world is experiencing this world of quarantine, and TikTok was already on this incredible trajectory. And it's as if what you think is going to level out just went to a whole nother level of skyrocketing. What are you seeing in TikTok, and what do you think is, are we peaking now finally, or what do you think is happening in the TikTok world?
No, we just getting started in the TikTok world. So
Yeah.
I think because there's an interesting. So we've been following the news for the last few weeks. Because I do this weekly news thing, I kind of try to. I have this privilege of looking at what's going on from a trends perspective. So
Yeah.
so there are a couple of things that are happening with TikTok. They are starting to transition. Slowly, they're keeping the whole music and that kind of thing, that young dance thing going, but they're also getting to a point where they're saying you don't have to all dance all the time. Like if you don't dance, that's totally fine. You can still use TikTok. And some of the influencers in India are people who actually never dance, like teachers. So the EduTalk, for example, so they have all these hashtags, and one of the hashtag challenge is the EduTalk, which is very popular educational stuff. And that is becoming very popular now. And then hacks like iPhone hacks, in 10 seconds you teach people to do something on iPhone. That kind of thing is going viral here in India. And recently, last week, they released a challenge called Learn on TikTok or something like that. I forget the exact thing. Learn on TikTok or something like that, which is again educational. So they want to empower people to get themselves educated in this lockdown time. They're saying you're sitting at home, instead of just watching dance videos, learn something, so learn a language. And then people are learning English, for example. Young people are learning English on TikTok in innovative way, because you got to be in 15-second pieces and 60 seconds. So even the teachers, you have to be innovative. Some of the ministries I work with, I keep telling them, think differently. How would you present a concept? So it's both challenging and it's also nice, because it is making all of us very brief conversationalists, and it's like kind of throwing us out of our comfort zone, and especially for ministries who are used to having a 1-hour sermon and now you're like 15 seconds, that kind of thing. So that's what's happening with TikTok. It's fascinating. I mean, and it's just getting started.
Yeah. And I remember when Twitter came around 10 years ago, and it was like, oh, we've got to learn how to communicate in 140 characters. And it was the same kind of thing. Now you're kind of taking that same concept of video, of how do you consolidate? And, I remember when Snapchat came around, and it was like, we have disappearing videos. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Why would you ever do that? Well, then Instagram adopts it, and like, to not have stories seems crazy today. And that just became a medium we just adapted to. And what's interesting for my experience with TikTok is I got on maybe a year ago because I felt like I had to learn it. And I remember telling my wife, like, I felt weird because it's a bunch of teenagers dancing on there. And I was like, and I'm like, Katie, I need you to sit next to me watching this so you don't look over my shoulder and think, that what are you looking at? But even in the midst of doing that, it learned, the things that I was interested in, and my wife got into it. I bet, my wife, it has helped her get through, just from an entertainment standpoint, get through this quarantine time. And I'm now in a place where I get my sports news on TikTok. I get, it really is an incredible, the technology behind it, the intelligence is, I think it's better than Facebook's algorithm of how it's learning. I'm with you. I think this is a medium, and I think it's a medium that a lot are going to adopt of, I think we see it and I think we saw Snapchat as kids doing bad things, and that's why they wanted it to be deleted. But it's understanding, I think, the medium and learning to adapt your message to that medium. And I think ministries hopefully are not going to always play catch up, but can see that this medium is coming on fast, and we need to adapt to it. The truth is, you should have seen this for the last 2 years. I mean, this isn't out of nowhere. There was 100 million active users before this quarantine time. So this didn't come out of nowhere, but it has skyrocketed during quarantine. Nachi, one of the things that I really learned in my time in India is WhatsApp. And in America, it hasn't picked up as much traction, but in India, it's very common. Now, I will say, over the last year, I've seen more and more engagement on WhatsApp. But I would love to get your thoughts and maybe even help people understand and a lot of people might not even use WhatsApp. What is WhatsApp? How does it work? How do people use it? What's the core purpose of WhatsApp?
Okay. The simplest way to understand WhatsApp is it is just a messenger type of an app. But it's more than that, because, for example, in places like India, it's a replacement for text message. I mean, people literally, they won't text, but they'll use WhatsApp. So it's used that widely, and it's one of the most common apps you will find in India. And people have multiple phones, which means they have multiple WhatsApp accounts and so on. So you'll have more WhatsApp accounts than people in India, I guess. So that's the background. But one of the key things I think people who have been started need to understand is this. This is the interesting thing about WhatsApp. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook.
Yes.
Now that changes everything, because if you see Mark Zuckerberg's interview and all the strategic things about Facebook going forward, everything has this word WhatsApp in it. The last conference they had, they talked about how they're bringing interoperability between Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. And even just this couple of weeks back, there was an announcement about meeting rooms, and there was so much mention about WhatsApp. And the latest announcement about Facebook Shops, and there was so many mentions about WhatsApp. And they're saying that you can finish your transaction on WhatsApp. You can just send a message. And then Facebook has already done its huge research on testing of 100 million users here in India for WhatsApp Pay, which is basically sending a message and paying each other. Yeah. So, and even the pay system here in India that's another big topic, but we've totally evolved that system. So we are completely ready for this. And now with Libra, Novi wallet and all that, now one of the things I think from coming back to WhatsApp, what people need to understand is WhatsApp is a key strategic tool in the hands of Facebook. And Facebook is that big giant that is sitting there with Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp in their hands. And they're going to deploy WhatsApp in the center of all of this, simply because it's such an easy app to work with. I mean, once you get using it, you can't go back. It's so easy. You can make video calls like that. You can just press off a button. Now, when it comes with the commercial capability, then it's like a whole different ball game. So, especially ministries and nonprofits listening to me, I just want to say it's time for you to start looking at WhatsApp in two ways. One is your audience, especially in the US, even though they're not using it, it's only a matter of time before that kind of starts catching up and people use it. Second, it's an incredible outreach tool for the rest of the world. I mean, if your ministry is on WhatsApp, then that opens up amazing opportunities for you to minister to people outside the US, and especially in developing areas, which also happens to be countries that really need the gospel. And so that in that way, I think WhatsApp is a very strategic tool for ministries, and I would highly recommend that if nobody started with it, they look at it as an important tool in the future.
Yeah, fascinating. And so with WhatsApp, and trying to even understand, and I'll tell you, Nachi, what I have started doing is on my computer, I kind of have these kind of clusters of tabs, and one of them is my messaging cluster, and I have my text message, my messenger messages, and I have my WhatsApp, web platform right there together, and those are all of my direct messages and how I communicate. Do you see? So it doesn't. Nothing is identical to another way of communication, but when we shift and move away, in many ways we're moving away from television, moving into Netflix and YouTube and kind of this on-demand media experience digitally, and it's a different form, but it does replace a behavior. Do you see this replacing our phone? Do you think we'll actually have no phone numbers in the future and it'll just be WhatsApp, or does Messenger do that? In some ways I get confused as to what's the difference between Messenger and WhatsApp.
So the basic difference is WhatsApp works based on a real phone number. Like you need to have a real number, and then that's your WhatsApp number. Unlike Messenger, which is just an ID. So eventually, what will happen is because of security reasons, there will come a time when Facebook kind of merges Instagram DMs Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp as a messaging tool. They'll all come together, and there you will probably need a number. So everybody's moving towards a number system simply because you can't get a number without an ID, and that kind of brings a level of security inside. So I think when anybody's trying to move towards WhatsApp, the one thing they need to understand is your number is out there. So that's your WhatsApp number. Of course, you can have another number separately for WhatsApp and things like that, but it's still it's a good system as far as I'm concerned, because it kind of puts a security block right there. But because of that, it also brings in the telephony capabilities. Almost it's just like an SMS. And for example, when there is a national disaster, like we had floods a few years ago, and what Facebook did is they said they tied up with the the telecom companies, and they said it's going to be WhatsApp is going to be free. So whatever data you use for WhatsApp is not going to be counted as data. So everybody had free WhatsApp during that disaster system, and because it's connected to a phone number, it still could work on a telephone system. So technologically, without getting too technical into it, even without data in some areas, in a different form of data, WhatsApp will be able to function. So that's why I think Facebook has invested so much in it, because there's a lot at stake from a long-term perspective.
Wow. It's fascinating when you get into how the technology actually functions and why that is so important. And right now, security and encryption is such a big conversation. And it's fascinating because it's, I think as our world is becoming more and more connected, that gets complicated with different governments and different policies and different, countries, and even where the data is stored, it's really complex and fascinating. And Facebook and Google, I feel like, are really at the center of that. Nachi, for a ministry that isn't using WhatsApp, where do you start, or even an individual that isn't using WhatsApp? What's the best place to start and get used to and begin to understand the platform?
Yeah. So there are two ways to do it. One is the individual. You get a personal, just download the WhatsApp app, link to your number and get started. Just play around with it, connect with someone who's already using it, start chatting with them. You will kind of get to know the lay of the land. But for a ministry, I wouldn't suggest that. I would say go with the business app. So WhatsApp has two apps. One is a personal app and a business app. So I highly recommend you download the business app. Now, the good thing is on your phone, you can have both apps. So on regular circumstances, you can't have two WhatsApp apps, just like any other. But in this situation, you can have a personal WhatsApp app and you can have a business WhatsApp app. So I would recommend you download that. Now, the good thing with the business version of WhatsApp is you can even use it with your land phone or any phone. Basically, they'll even call you to verify the number. So you can use your ministry line if you like, or toll free or whatever, and get started with that. And then you can start putting that as part of your contact information. And the good thing about WhatsApp is they give you lots of these tools that you can put on your website, on your an email. In one click, people will be able to message you. So that is one of my favorite things. So you put a button on your website, people can click the button. They don't have to do anything from their phone. They just click the button. It opens up the app. It fills the form, fills the information for them. All they have to do is send. So it's like 2 clicks. You've got somebody sending you a message on WhatsApp. And mind is, when somebody sends you a message, you get their number. Which never happens in email and other things. So it really is a personal conversation, and the open rate in WhatsApp is mind blowing. So we have ministries who send out just like message broadcast, just like a email newsletter. You send your newsletter on WhatsApp. The open rate is more than 90%.
90%.
Yeah.
And I think email is like 17%. I think.
Exactly. If you get more than 10, you're like awesome. So here it's 90%, because WhatsApp is where people live in. Like, they open all the time. So so these are some of the capabilities that you could start with the WhatsApp business. So I would say start with that, and then you can go step by step. Use broadcast list. You can use groups. There's just many strategies around WhatsApp.
Yeah, I love it. So Nachi, what I did as I was been playing is I was like, I need a phone number. And I was already using my, anyways, I maybe I created too many. I don't remember why, but I needed a phone number. So I went and downloaded an app called Burner app, which is actually what drug dealers typically use. And it gave me a phone number, and I can actually take phone calls and text messages. in my phone through this app, but it also allowed me to create a WhatsApp business account through that app and with that phone number. And so there really are, I think don't let the barriers, I think go and figure this out. But I'm with you, Nachi. This is, as our world is getting smaller and as Facebook is consolidating Messenger and Instagram and Facebook, and who knows, I think where this is going to go, who's going to acquire Twitter, what's going to happen with all of this. But I do think that WhatsApp is a critical part of Facebook moving forward. And if you can create an engagement path that has a 90% open rate, that's massive. And so I think one of the places to start is think about your small groups and how my connect group at Hillsong, how we communicate is through WhatsApp. My kids' school here, and I think New York is a little different than Texas, even from a cultural standpoint here in the U.S. But all of the parents are on a WhatsApp group together, and it's a really great group community standpoint. And then I've got a lot of friends, and Nachi, you and I, message back and forth on WhatsApp, and so it's such a great tool. I'm such a big fan, and I've learned so much. Nachi, as we wrap up this conversation, any thoughts from your seat as you speak into church leaders? And this podcast is primarily American church leaders, but I do know we have some global church leaders. What would you want to share with them as some final thoughts?
Yeah, I've been thinking about something for the last few days, so I probably. And I was just thinking of what this COVID situation has done to us as a church. Yeah. I mean, there's never been a pandemic before in the history that has actually put all of us in a very closely similar platform because of the internet. So today, I mean, there have been pandemics before, there have been situations before, but this particular issue has really, this has been the one where we've been the most connected as a church. So as someone who wrote that book called The Connected Church, I've been thinking how connected we've become in this lockdown situation. So I think what I want to tell the church and ministry leaders is let's try to keep that going. Let's not again go back to our little, groups and say, I'm this area church, this is my denomination, this is what it is. We've all got connected. We've all become like one body, very close to the early church, and because of the technology and internet, and people have all come together and we've done that. So let's just keep that going. I know this is not going to be lasting for a long time. Things are going to change, but I think this is something that we should look at, learn from, and keep going as a body of Christ. Just be connected to each other and build God's kingdom. So I don't know if it was too.
I love it. I love it. You're right. I mean, I think let's lean in and let's not let the good that's come out of this quarantine season pass, because our new normal, it creates an opportunity for a new, really great normal as a future and as a body of believers and as a global, body of believers. Nachi, I love you. I love the ministry that you lead, the work you do. I love your smile and your energy. If you are listening to this, make sure you go to YouTube and watch the video. You got to see Nachi smile and just, Nachi loves Jesus. He loves technology. I love Nachi. You're going to want to follow him on social media. You're going to want to get his book. Go to socialmedia.church. All the links are there on the website, to his website, to his book, to his social media handles. Go and soak up all the knowledge that Nachi puts out there for free, and then go buy his book and really dig in. Nachi, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me, Nils. Such a joy chatting with you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Love you too. Yeah.